Getting there. Parents came on, must have came in 2010 because he came in as the associate director under forgot what her name was.
Holly.
And Clarence was the executive director at Neighborhood House, which is where my kids did daycare. And I ended up being on the board and chair of the board at Neighborhood House. So I've had, a 20-year relationship. My kids are now 19 and 20. But they were at Neighborhood House from the time they were infants until they were 3 or 4 years old before they went off to school.
Is Clarence still there? He's not
Clarence
still there.
at WC.
Oh, we're live.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, she hit the button. I'm like, looking, I'm like, wait, we're live. So, hey, folks, got a hot mic going on. I'm glad we weren't saying some incendiary things here going on.
Making connections.
Joe came in prepared.
Right, he came in prepared. He had a whole dossier on me and Jordan. He's running us down. I'm like, oh, yeah, I worked there. Yeah, I did. Okay, gotcha. But as promised, we got a special guest in studio tonight. Got my co-host Jordan.
How's it going, everybody?
For what again?
State Assembly, District 12, northwest side of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You guys got me hot off the press. Just came from knocking on doors again. But I'm here, happy, and we're happy to have Mr. Joe Brennan here today with us.
Thank you for reaching out to his campaign and getting him here. So like I said, as promised, we got our special guest, Joe Brennan, who is running for Wisconsin governor with a crowded field of Democrats, right?
There is. Most of them, all of them, my friends.
All
we all
friends.
work together.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, good. And again, the reason why we're doing this, so folks, I know the last election cycle we had here, people were keep saying they didn't know people, they didn't know the candidates. So now we have no room to say we don't know folks, because if you want to know people, we've had how many guests now?
We've had of the candidates, we've had all of them but one.
Yeah, all of them but one.
All but one.
All but one. And we know that one.
We'll call him out later.
Yeah, we'll call him out at the end.
Yeah.
But we've had all of the candidates here on the Democratic side for governor. So people can't say, well, I don't know who this is. If you want to know, just go to our shows.
Actually, sorry about that.
What?
2 of them.
2? Okay.
Kelda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Mandela.
Okay.
Mandela.
We're going to get both of them at the end. We're going to call them out at the end.
Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in. So we have Joel with us this afternoon. Joel, tell us about yourself, man. What's up? Are you a true Wisconsinite or what?
I got about five generations of Wisconsin.
5 generations.
So my dad will be 100 years old next year. Born in 1927 in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, to a single mother. So it was kind of a scandal in Manitowoc to be, born to a single mom in 1927. And then at 18, my dad, it was the end of World War II, and my dad enlisted in the Army and thought he was going off to fight in World War II. Never saw combat, but still qualifies as a World War II vet. So, and my dad grew up with a half brother. My mom lived in the Sherman Park neighborhood, born in 1928, and spent her summers out in East Troy. There used to be a railroad that would take you from downtown Milwaukee out to East Troy. There's still a little section of it that's left, but you could get there. You could get out to East Troy and Walworth County faster than we can drive there now. This was in the 1930s. You could do this. So my mom spent summers on a farm because that's where her mom was from, but grew up in Sherman Park. My grandmother lived in Sherman Park. I grew up in the western suburbs. So my mom was an only child. My dad had a half brother. They got together in college, and they ended up having 12 kids.
Wow,
12 kids. One kid, one of my older brother died in the late 1950s at less than a year old of childhood cancer. But 11 of us made it to adulthood, and so I'm the second youngest of the 11 Brennan kids who made it to adulthood.
Oh, you are Wisconsin.
I am Wisconsin.
Literally.
5 generations, 11 brothers, all brothers.
No. They're actually most sisters, 7 sisters and 3 brothers.
Oh, 7 sisters and 3 brothers. Oh man.
So I got beat up. I got beat up by girls a lot. I was second youngest. But it was a great family. I don't know what your family life was like, but growing up in a large family for me was awesome. And my parents, we didn't have a lot of stuff growing up. My dad it was never that successful at business, but he wrote children's books. Like that's what he would want to be known for. Is he wrote children's books, and we still have some of those books. And my dad died when I was 20, and he was 63, so he was a very young man.
Oh, yeah.
But he has had many grandchildren, like more than 30 grandkids since the time that he passed away, and never got to meet them, but they got to see some of his wit through the books that he did. And like, while they were never commercially successful, they were things that are keepsakes for us. And my mom, after raising her 11 kids, went back to work, and she was the main breadwinner in my family for a good period of time. And she died about 12 years ago, but she was somebody who I looked up to my whole life. So yeah, it's a Milwaukee and Wisconsin story. Generally, my wife and I live now in Brewers Hill.
Okay.
We have 2 kids that we've raised in the city. So, it was not a bad commute to come here today. This is this is the last thing of the night for me, and then I get to go home.
There you go. Well,
do you want to tell them what else today is too?
Well, today's also my birthday.
This is his birthday.
Today's your birthday.
He came to, first of all,
oh wow,
thank you. Joe Brennan came to join us on Facts Over Fiction podcast on his birthday. So kudos to you.
Well, I'm just going to say that it's also Micah Parsons' birthday. Like I could have said it's Micah Parsons' birthday. That would have been more interesting, but I happen to share a birthday with Micah. So if he's watching out there,
well,
here's to you.
Well, hey, I hear that we getting some views out there, so he may be watching. Happy birthday, man.
Yeah. And happy birthday to you as well.
Happy birthday to you too, man. That seriously means a lot that you took the time to spend your 35th birthday out here with us this evening. So, man, thanks a lot.
I appreciate all of what you just said. All of it.
Yeah.
We asked for contributions on my birthday, and we asked for $56. That was a little bit of a bid. The 35 would have just not been enough.
I mean, I thought, trying to make it look good. But so Joe, tell us, are you new to Wisconsin politics? Is this something new for you, running for governor? Have you run for political office before?
So what I am trying to do in this race is I am trying to do what Abraham Lincoln and Barack Obama did. Lose their first race running for office and never lose again.
Okay.
So I ran for the state legislature. You know what this is like, but I ran for the state legislature in 2003 in a special election for state senate. Okay. And I lost in a Democratic primary by just several hundred votes in a race that the other candidate who was running was a much more conservative Democrat than I, Jeff Paley, who ended up serving in the legislature for a period of time.
Okay.
So I lost that race in 2003, and I don't think I thought at that time that I was necessarily going to run again for anything. But I've been working around public policy throughout most of my adult life. I worked at the city, running the redevelopment authority for Tom Barrett.
Okay.
I left that job to go to work at Discovery World, where I worked for 11 years as the CEO. So trying to get young people from the city, some who live in neighborhoods around here who had never been to see the lake. We all know those things, and get people and young people engaged in STEM education. And then in 2018, when Governor Evers won against Scott Walker for governor, he asked me to leave that job and to take the job as the secretary of the Department of Administration in Wisconsin, which is the top appointee in the governor's cabinet and is responsible for the state budget, for procurement, for IT, for all the real estate, doing negotiating the compacts on the Native American gaming in Wisconsin. So it gives you very wide berth. It really is kind of extension of the governor's office, and the idea is to help the governor run the executive branch. Right. So that was the job that I had. Did a lot of work with you. We work with the Department of Corrections now. I did work with lots of my colleagues around the cabinet there, and part of that time was during COVID. So one of the most challenging periods we've ever had as a state. And I did that for 3 years, and left just as the governor was running for re-election. I left to come back to Milwaukee and run the Greater Milwaukee Committee, which is a civic organization, been around for about 80 years here. Okay. And it's got members from the business community, from the nonprofit sector, and all the heads of the higher education institutions in the southeastern Wisconsin area. So I've been doing that for about a little over 4 years. And when Governor Evers said he wasn't going to run again, I feel like I've got a mix of experience and executive experience really over the last 2 decades that would serve us well. People bring their different experiences to a race like this. We already said they're all my friends, and you know, some in the legislature and some other experience. What I have had is, you know, the responsibility to run complex organizations, to try to solve problems, and to do it with lots of different people, but ultimately to be the person who's held accountable for that. And that's the reason why I'm running, is because I think we live in dark, dangerous, terrible times in lots of ways. And we need people who are problem solvers, not in this just for vengeance, not in it to get even with anybody, because we see, you know, with Donald Trump, the way he operates. And if that's what we're going to do, that's not good enough for us in Wisconsin. And we've got to get to a point where we're getting stuff done, because there are people in the neighborhoods that we navigate here in Milwaukee who are hurting. And it's the same in rural parts of the state. There's a lot of commonality of what's going on. And if we don't roll up our sleeves and actually try to get to work solving problems, then we're not going to be the Wisconsin that we want to be. And that's that's what I've tried to be in every leadership position that I've held as a resident here. And I've got one shot to do this. And so I'm giving it my all, and I'm out there every day pounding the pavement.
Okay.
Pounding the pavement some places, pounding dirt roads somewhere, or, you know, farm field. It's different. Here we can pound the pavement. Other places you have to do other things.
So I want to go back into your executive experience. You know, obviously, you know, when you mentioned that you work for the Department of Administration, I always look at that as like the operational arm of the government or of the party, right? Or not the party, I'm sorry, the administration. So you're handling, like you said, some of the complex negotiations, operational back end stuff. Giving some of the issues we're dealing with around healthcare, Badger Care Plus, all those different things, like how can you use your executive experience specifically to kind of mitigate some of those issues right off the back? Obviously, we can't afford to wait. You know,
wait for the feds to help.
Wait for any help. So, what's your 30, 60 day, 90-day plan with your executive experience, operational background to get the state right where we need to get?
Well, you know, one of the things that I think is important, you know, if Scott Walker had expanded Badger Care in 2014, when we had the opportunity to do it, we'd have about $2.5 billion more to deal with the cost of everything now with affordability. Like, you know, and again, like, we can't just curse the darkness, but that's what people ought to understand. Like, we have covered more people over the last decade plus, but it's cost Wisconsin more money. And we have paid for people in Iowa and Minnesota and Alabama and South Carolina, all these other places. We paid for them to get healthcare. So one of the things I think we absolutely have to do is we still, while it's not as lucrative or not as good for us as it would have been before Donald Trump started cutting a whole bunch of things, like expanding Badger Care is still something we've got to do. We've got to provide a public option for people in Wisconsin. And, you know, there are different models for how you do it. In my view, if we started with the state employee health plan as a base and looked at doing that as something we could grow out of, I think that's a valuable and valid way for us to do it. Some just want to have it be, you know, a public option that starts with Badger Care and uses that. I mean, I think we got to look at where we are next spring after the elections and the damage that Donald Trump is doing, you know, taking $800 billion out of Medicaid over the next decade and all the other things that are happening, and take stock and see what works. Like, there will be ways for us to navigate this, and we've got to make sure we know the pathway that we can take that. So on healthcare, those are the things immediately. But there's other issues for us to deal with when it comes to health challenges. You know, in Wisconsin, this is not an issue. I mean, it's an issue in certain parts of Milwaukee, but it's not as big an issue here as in some parts of the state. There are, I think, about 26 counties that don't have a practicing OBGYN. Don't have, you know, so people have to go hours to deliver a baby, and all that means for, you know, not only for healthy kids, but also well baby visits after, and all of those types of things. Like, that's not the Wisconsin I think that we want to have and create. There are ways for us to make strides on that and make sure that, you know, in underserved parts of the state, we've got a pathway for people to get into roles in it. Some of that is in the central city of Milwaukee. Some of that is in rural parts of the state where they have seen clinics and hospitals close and things where, you know, access to healthcare is just not there. So, like, those are the types of things that I think we want to do immediately. One of the planks, and I've got 4 of them when it comes to healthcare, but one that's important and hugely important is that we've also just got to make mental health part of basic healthcare in Wisconsin. Like, you know, there is a heaviness around the world we live in. We've all lived through COVID. We saw what that wrought. there's just things about society today that we need to make sure that basic healthcare includes mental health, and that's who we are. So like those are some of the things that I want to do. But you ask about 30, 60, 90 day, like I think all that is important. But here's one thing that I like, we could talk about this more too, but there was never, and you're much younger than I am, both you guys probably.
Not that much younger.
But there's never been a more consequential election statewide in my lifetime, I don't think, than when Scott Walker was elected in 2010. Scott Walker was elected, Republicans in the Assembly, Republican majority in the state Senate, and they brought in a whole era that we're just now dealing with. The gerrymandered districts, Act 10, what that meant to working people. Like we have had trouble since Act 10 in finding prison guards and finding people who will take state jobs, in doing stuff and finding teachers. Like there was this mass exodus. I'd like to think that 2026 could be the year we close the book on what Scott Walker did and the damage that started in 2010 that we lived with for 15 years, and usher in a period between now and 2040 that we know Wisconsin can be reliably progressive, that we're dealing with issues that people care about, that we respect working people. Like that's the era that I think we're on the cusp of bringing in. And that means we have to do things right in the first month. We have to do things right in the first budget, but we also need to make sure we're building brick by brick a Wisconsin and a Democratic Party that's going to have staying power. Like that's what I want. And I've been around stuff over the last 35 years and I've seen ups and downs. And I think we've got to build in ways that are going to be sustainable for the long term.
Yeah. That's right up your alley there with all that policy.
Yeah, I was like,
he loves that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's needed. You made a great point around, I call it the downward slope of what Walker ushered in back in 2010. We're feeling the ramifications of that now. We talk about it all the time. Like the position we're in now, we argue goes back to Reaganomics in those days, but then it trickles down through the Bush administration and so on and so on. But in Wisconsin specifically, you can pinpoint a specific policy date around Governor Walker's inception into that office, around the conservatism that took over the state for the last 15 years. So we need to usher in, to your point, a new progressive politics that's going to get the state back on a trajectory of success.
And there's a generation of young people here. That's all they've known. Like they don't know that. True. I mean, and we had all the promise at the federal level of Barack Obama during that time, and what that meant. And we've had the Biden presidency that had its ups and downs, but at the state level, like. We were doing all these things where there was all this competition at the federal level because of gerrymandered maps. We didn't have a prayer. Like one of Governor Evers' great gifts to us is leaving us legislative maps that look like Wisconsin and that give us a fighting chance to have a majority. And that is that's what we should be about. Now we got to make sure people get out to vote. We need to protect their rights to vote. Like, I want to be governor of 6 million people, whether they vote for me or not, but every one of those people should have the right to go vote freely and fairly. And that stuff's under attack right now. So that's the stuff we got to make sure we're getting right when it comes to the mechanics of voting too.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's giving me a little small segue into another topic with us seeing the Trump administration going to different states, mainly states that did not vote for him in the 2020 election. It's going to come here. It's already here. What would be your plan to kind of stave that off if you were to become our next governor?
Well, there's two things specifically on it. One is what we have seen with ICE, and what happened in Minneapolis, and we've seen in other states. Like one of the things that I would take a page out of what they've done in Illinois, and I called for this several months ago, is to create an accountability commission here in Wisconsin. And what that would mean is, one, if ICE is here, you've got the ability to, if you're taking pictures or video, there's a secure state website you could upload that to, and that there is a state sanctioned place where that's going to be protected. Like that's one thing. Okay. Secondly, we create a commission, and the members of that commission would be people who are kind of above reproach, whether it's retired Supreme Court justices, whether it's people who are in law enforcement or people who are in nonprofits that are related to immigration in our communities and in our state, like, and they would then look at ways that eventually we can hold people to account on this. If you're a uniformed federal law enforcement official and you break a state law, if you break federal law, there ought to be, and there will be a day for reckoning for that. Like, we need people to be able to do that. So, like, those are the kind of things, you know, and I called for that, in addition to making sure that ICE can't get to places of worship and hospitals and courthouses and schools, like all of those things that we should be doing, making sure that we're in multi-state lawsuits and have the attorney general, like, those are things that we should make sure that we are doing, that we can beat back ICE. But, like, if I were governor right now, I would create this, because it may not be happening right now, but if there's any evidence that we have, like, we should expect the worst of Donald Trump, and we should be prepared for that. Like, those are the kind of things we can do. And when it comes to voting rights, like, again, I want to be governor of everybody in this state, whether they vote for me or not. To me, one of the great failings of Donald Trump, and there are many, is he thinks he's only governor of those states that voted for him. He thinks he's only governor, or he thinks he's president of just those people who cast a ballot for him. That's not the way it works. Like, that's not what it's been for 250 years. So protecting people's right to vote early, to vote by mail, making sure we're protecting people who work at the polls, who count votes, if necessary, do in 2026 what we did in 2020, which is call up members of the National Guard, not in uniform, not with their guns, but in their civilian clothes, to work alongside people at the polls. Like, make sure everybody's got a right to vote. Like, that's what patriotism is. That's what America is built on, right? And we are in a situation where, you know, Trump said he was going to nationalize elections in states like Wisconsin. Steve Bannon saying we're going to surround polling places with ICE. Like, those are types of things, you know. But we better take those seriously, right? We better be ready to do the things that allow people opportunities to vote there. So, like, those are things that I would do on those, and they're things that I'm absolutely passionate about. You know, we use the term patriotism a little loosely in this country. For some people, it's, you know, it's like just a term that they use, and they'll define themselves as that. You know, patriots for me are people who work on the other side of the table when I go to vote, people who are registering people to vote, people who on election day are observers, or they're taking people to the polls. Like, that's patriotism. That's like the ultimate participatory sport of democracy. That's people who are getting involved. And we got to protect that at every level, and, you know, and with every ounce of our energy.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. So back on the economy, not economic, but more so education. Under, and as you mentioned before, Scott Walker administration, they took over $800 million from our MPS here in Milwaukee. What would be your plan for education here in the state?
Well, first of all, like, my kids were MPS students for a combined 22 years. So, like, and they're both in college now, and we really loved the education that they got and the kids that they went to school with, and I'm still connected with those schools and with those parents, and that's something that's valuable. Now, we all can agree that doesn't happen enough in MPS, and doesn't happen enough statewide. Couple statistics for us to, you know, just to wrestle with. In the return from COVID, and just the, like, how are states doing in the return from COVID? There were 38 states that were measured in terms of achievement in math. Wisconsin finished 33rd in, like, how we're doing related to COVID. In reading, it was 35 states that measured this. Wisconsin finished 30th. Like, that's not good enough for us, right? Those are not outcomes that are good enough for us in general. You know, Milwaukee MPS had a $250 million referendum 2 years ago. There are in this past election in April, there were 60 school districts around the state that went to referendum just to keep the lights on, just for operations. And so the first thing I think that we can do is take the state funding formula for education, which has not worked since it was introduced in 1993, scrap it, created a formula that almost every other state has gone to, where every kid has every kid has this value. And then if there's special education needs, you add on for that. English language learners, if you're, you know, rural or urban poverty, like, you build a formula that is based around the kid and the child. That's not what we have done in Wisconsin for the last 30 years. That's where we start to get to a point where every kid has value. Everybody in Milwaukee and other parts of the state, they understand, and they can, you know, it's a very predictable thing about where they're going, because there are probably 24 people maybe in the state who understand the school funding formula. There's a lawsuit that's been filed to try to get it declared unconstitutional. Like, what I want to do is, as governor, have a few more allies in the legislature and roll up our sleeves to say, this is what we need to get done and accomplished in education. Now, inevitably, that's going to mean we're going to spend more money on education, because you kind of have to hold everybody harmless. But ultimately, you build a formula that meets the needs of the classrooms now, and it meets the needs of different communities. Education is in Milwaukee is not the same as it is in Marinette, not the same as it is in Marshfield. Like, we've got to make sure that people understand that there are different needs, and you can't pit one kid against another. Like, another reality of the way the funding formula works now is, when Milwaukee raised $250 million or $240 million in a referendum a couple of years ago, that meant that 350 out of 430 school districts around the state, they lost money the next year because of the way the formula works. You talk about, Milwaukee's already got challenges when we go up, and talk about ourselves elsewhere around the state. Like, talk about pitting kids in one part of the state versus another. Like, that's not a Wisconsin that we want to be in and be part of.
So you mentioned, it inevitably is going to cost money to fix some of these issues, or specifically around education. I wanted to just say, I agree that we need to start looking and thinking innovatively around how do we recreate and refocus these issues. But one of the things we always talk about is revenue, and the lack of revenues that we have coming into the state to supplement some of the costs of education and these other issues. So what's your thoughts around how do we increase or diversify our revenue streams in the state? I talk about a regional approach, looking at what Indianapolis and Minneapolis and Illinois is doing, how they're bringing in not just outside of marijuana and all that stuff, but what are some ways that we could generate revenue in the state to help us offset those costs?
Yeah. I mean, and you said you don't want to just talk about marijuana, but that is one.
Yeah, that's one of them,
I mean, we lose $40 million a year at the border to Illinois, and that's the only place that they measure it. They don't measure it as much in Michigan or Minnesota. So, like, there is revenue to be had there. There are tax breaks that corporations get, the manufacturing and agricultural tax credit for one. Like, I think it costs between $300 and $400 million a year. In some ways, you may not even use the term agriculture associated with that, because very few farmers get it. And so, like, I'll give you an example. There's a corporation I visited up in Manitowoc when I was there last week, and the guy said, the CEO said, yeah, we get that, but that same CEO is spending, and that company is spending $400 a month to underwrite daycare for all their employees. So, like, he's getting it, and he's doing right by his employees. Like, if you get that and you're not doing, like, what his point was, there's lots of other people who are taking this, and they're not doing anything right by their community. So, like, those are ways, I think, for us to take a very specific look at how we're spending money. Again, I got to tell you, I put together 2 budgets for the governor, or worked on 2 budgets with him as the Secretary of DOA. It's not just about getting new revenue. It's how do we make sure we're spending revenue in the right ways. You work at DOC for a decade or more, there's been a fight every year. Are we spending more money on higher education in Wisconsin or on the Department of Corrections? A Wisconsin value, to me, would say we need to spend more money on education, right? Like, and it was a surprise to me. So when I went to the Department of Administration, the Department of Corrections, by far, is the largest employer in state government. Like, almost a third out of 35,000 state employees work for DOC. Now, there's lots of DOC facilities around the state, but you look at us and compare us to Minnesota, state immediately to our west, roughly the same population. They have about a third as many people incarcerated as we do here in Wisconsin. Crime rates about the same. We've got more people working at DOC than they have incarcerated in state prisons in Minnesota. Like, this is not something we can change overnight, but they're doing something right. Yes. They're doing something that allows them to invest in other ways that we have not done here. There has been corrections reform all around the country, largely in red states, because they know that it's been one of the things that's been absolutely killing their state budgets, and and they've reinvested some of those dollars in other areas. I'd like to think we could get to the point and be courageous and bipartisan enough in Wisconsin where we say, yes, we got to make sure we are doing everything around public safety. There isn't a person in Milwaukee who doesn't want enough cops on the street and and to have adequate public safety. And that's the same no matter where you go around the state. But there's also a way in which I think you can manage these things in a smarter way that protects public safety, protects the public good, but also ensures that we're doing things at the other end of the pipeline, because the prison is at one end of the pipeline. The other end is investing in early childhood, investing in public education. Like those things, the less you do on that front end, the more you see the results on the back end. And we've been living that for more than a generation here.
Oh man, yeah, I love that idea. And my colleagues at DLC will probably say the same thing.
I'll tell you, so you worked at DOC. I think when my friend Kevin Carr was the secretary,
yes,
a Milwaukee resident, and he, nobody I think who cared more, but he also, I recognize he had one of the toughest jobs in state government, because there's all of these challenges. He was there during COVID when there were lockdowns in places, and it's bad enough. There are inhumane conditions for inmates in a number of the prisons. We've got 140-year-old facilities that we absolutely need to do something about. But it's as bad sometimes for people who work there, and the conditions for people who are inside there. That is not easy for anybody. And we've faced a thing over the last 15, 20 years where they can make more money going across the street to work at Walmart than they do having those very difficult jobs inside the state prisons. And so we've got to make sure that we're dealing with all of this stuff as a whole.
Yeah, see, I work on the community correction side, so which houses the probation and parole units. And I'm an administrator now for our probation and parole units. And I can tell you now, what you just said, I think people would really appreciate that, to say that we do need to invest in our employees. Because like you said, you can go work for Walmart and get paid a lot more money taking over 100 and something or 200 something cases of folks and getting paid.
And when it's about reentry, when ultimately, for too many people, our correction system is only about retribution and vengeance, and it's not about rehabilitation. And I've had a few days in the campaign, truly, they stand out for me. I had a dinner down in Racine with a bunch of folks who are working on corrections reform, and most of them were formerly incarcerated, and learning about those who are still on paper, an extended supervision. And that in Wisconsin, it is much longer than it is in Illinois and in Michigan. You do something that, that sends you back inside after you've had several years of extended supervision, the clock starts over again. There are other states in the Midwest that aren't doing that. Even our neighbors aren't doing that. Again, to me, you've got to get to a point where we start to have conversations around what's reasonable. How do we get to a point where, yes, people should absolutely need to be held to account, but how are we getting to a point where there is a reentry? And there's lots of great work that happens at the local level. There are people who are getting degrees, and lots of work, that partnership that's happening. We need to continue to expand that, but somebody listening to this, somebody somewhere will say, oh, that makes me soft on crime. That makes, any of us soft on crime. We can be all about making sure we hold, people who are violent criminals to account for it, but also ensuring that we become the Wisconsin that we want to be. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
And see, when I hear that soft on crime thing, it makes me laugh, because the government just set up a slush fund to pay folks that
did crimes.
So soft on crime. Oh, okay, yeah.
No, I would say crime doesn't pay. In that case, they're trying to make it so at the federal level. It is enough to, it's laughable, except that it is really happening, and it is sad for us.
Yes.
I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot. Yeah, just went away. So
it'll come back around. So, well, I'll keep us going.
Yeah.
So I'm a Milwaukee born and bred, and I was born and raised in Milwaukee all my life. Milwaukee is a linchpin, though, of Wisconsin, especially of its budget. I'm pretty sure you have seen that in real time. What will be your plan to make sure that Milwaukee continues to thrive, so that the rest of the counties that get support from Milwaukee can continue to thrive?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is demonstrated time again that Milwaukee, the county, the city, they're they're net importers of resources to Madison, that we don't, this region doesn't get everything back that it sends to Madison. And
Correct.
so, you know, continuing to find ways that we can do it. It may never be a dollar for dollar match, that what goes in comes back out. But I've been very proud. I worked with the county executive. I worked with the mayor and a number of people in the business community and all over the place a couple of years ago to ensure that not only Milwaukee, the city, the county, that they got additional state shared revenue. Like, you know, that was something for 15 years, the Republicans in the legislature pretty much dialed down so that local units of government got no more money. I mean, imagine 15 years. Do you think costs went up for, you know, personnel, for resources, for supplies, for all, you know, all that stuff? And there was no money from state government for that. And so one of the things I did that I'm especially proud of during that time, it was my first year working with the Greater Milwaukee Committee. We raised about $700,000, and we went and hired a firm, a national firm, to go through and do an operational review for the city of Milwaukee and look at every department and say, okay, where are you spending money you shouldn't? What are your opportunities to raise revenue? And what it came down to was ultimately they found that over the course of the 15 years or so that the city has gotten no more money from state government, that they had cut pretty much everywhere that they could cut. So it was not a spending problem for the city. It was a revenue problem. And, you know, and most of that revenue comes from state government. So that became part of the way in which we were able to convince the legislature to provide more resources, not only to Milwaukee, but 1,800 units of government, and allow Milwaukee, the city and the county, to raise revenue through a sales tax here locally. Like those are things. And I think that there's ways that we should continue that. I think you have this contract that's existed for like 115 years between state and local government. Like, you know, the idea when this was happening back in like 1912 was that all of the money is going to go to Madison. You raise it through sales tax, income taxes, whatever, like it all goes to Madison. And then Madison turns around and they distribute it equitably around the state. And it worked pretty well for, I don't know, 85 years or something like that. But then it became broken when Republicans decided, yeah, we're just not going to give any more money to local government. Like that's not good enough. And it's not just a Milwaukee or Southeastern Wisconsin issue. This is a statewide issue. And so, you know, you've got, there are communities around the state, Racine, Whitewater, Stevens Point, they've gone to referendum in the last couple of years. They've raised their own taxes to create positions for firefighters. Like this is basic needs. This is like basic, you know, 101 at the city level. And the state is forcing them to have to go out and do this in order to just do the basics. And that's not the type of partnership in government. So, you know, you ask, what would I do for Milwaukee? First of all, I live here and, you know, and I raised my family here. I worked at the city level. The mayor has my number on speed dial. And I think oftentimes what happens in Madison, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Republican governor sometimes or a Democratic governor, the phone rings and it's the mayor of the city of Milwaukee. And somebody says, oh no, what's the problem now? And I think that's the wrong perspective. It's like we have challenges in Milwaukee. We know it, right?
Yes.
I mean, we're here in the Sherman Phoenix, and this was born out of one of the challenges we've had in Milwaukee in the last 10 or 15 years. Like this project in and of itself was something that rose out of tragedy and the consequence of things. Like we need to make sure that people understand that there are challenges here, but we also need to understand, and I don't know that, you know, again, growing up in this community, raising my family in this community, we know what the richness is here and what the opportunity is here. We just need to make sure that everybody is granted some opportunity to be part of that. Like that's what our mission should be around Milwaukee.
Yeah, I like that, Jordan.
No, he's saying everything.
I'm talking too much.
I have questions in my head. You're like, oh, he just answered it. Okay.
Jordan, I got a question.
Yes,
for you.
yes.
How's your experience been running for? Is this your first time running for office?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you for the question. It's been great actually. The best thing, I just put a post on Facebook. You know, I told you I submitted my signatures today, and what I said was that I am having a great time talking to all the constituents, who getting to know them. The Northwest side, if people don't know, is a very diverse district, more diverse than I even thought it was. We have a lot of veterans, we have a lot of seniors and elders, we have the youth population, we have a Hmong population. A lot of different people and different interests. So it's been incumbent on me to go in and not to just introduce myself and promote my vision and values for the district, but listen to them and seeing what they're all seeing. And they're all different. And sometimes there's some contrast, and figuring out a way, like, how can you balance both of those? So I think that's been the most rewarding part, is just getting out there and knocking on doors and talking to people. Um, um, you don't know me at all, but most people think that I'm like this outspoken, eccentric guy. That's my brother. I'm like really recluse and more prefer to be in the back end and just watching things. So I've been out of my comfort show for the last couple months being
But you grow
out front.
doing
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah,
And
yes,
you find that people, and it's the case in Milwaukee, it's the case wherever I go. Like I was at the parade in Sheboygan yesterday for Memorial Day. I was in Beloit on Saturday for a farmer's market, stopped in my mom's old hometown of East Troy. And you're going to get some people every once in a while who aren't, great to you, but like the world we live in, people will do that. They'll be nasty to you anonymously or online more than they will to you. Yes. Like they will be generally nice. And like, I think there is something to person contact that's always about finding middle ground. And we, like, again, if you want to know, like, I want this job because I also think we need to bring a different tone to the way we do things. It is not, hatred is not something that courses through my veins. Passion, wanting to get stuff done, being strategic, like the fact that we need to solve problems, all that stuff, absolutely. But if I am, and if people are looking for the candidate who just is the most vengeful or who wants to do, revenge as part of governing, like, then they have other options than me, because that's not what I'm in this for, and I don't think that's what people deserve. Like, that's not. They have seen all that Donald Trump has wrought and all the damage he has done. And part of that is because of perspective and what he brings, like that he is there to line his pockets, make some other people rich around him at the expense of everybody else. Screw everybody else. Like I'm for the, how do we bring everybody up? And that's the way I was raised. And I think that's the Wisconsin that we want.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I think what you said is very true. But what I've also seen is people want authenticity. People want you to bring your own true self and don't try to be someone else. And that's what I like. Out of all 80 of you guys running for governor, I think you guys all bring your true authentic selves and your own backgrounds, and that's reflected in your campaigns. And it's giving people, choices. Like there are legit choices in this, and everyone has great things. But the last thing I would say about that is people are fed up, and that is probably the consistent through line with everyone I'm talking to is because the world has changed so fast. We're in this economic state and political state. People need to see and feel the change that we have an opportunity to do, and they're just asking, "What are you going to do? What is our governor going to do?" So they're looking for not just the authenticity; they're looking for someone who's really going to come in and change the nature of business that we're doing right now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, and this is the case with government overall, but it's particularly the case with Democrats, that people don't necessarily trust us to do what we say we're going to do. And I like the work that I had to do during COVID. We had to provide support for 100,000 small businesses, for 20,000 family farms, for people in the city of Milwaukee who couldn't make rent. Like government was the last resort then. And we didn't do everything right, but we were able to actually demonstrate to people that government could be there as a tool. And to me, like, that is the best antidote to what's going on during the Trump thing, the Trump world, where they're breaking things in state government, they're in national government, and it's coming down to the states. They're pulling the safety net, they're pulling things out from under people, having the ground move under our feet. Like, we need to be able to demonstrate people that we can actually get something done, that we're listening, that they're going to be able to believe in us again. And that's a heavy burden, and that's a big task to take on. But I think we're worthy of that. And that's what I want to make sure that we can demonstrate. Like, I just have to believe that at some level, everybody still sees that there is an absolute need for what we have in state government. There is an opportunity for us to do things well and do things right. And that's what we should be in this for.
So let me ask you this then. Here's a question.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? Because, even on the legislature side, we have some young progressive candidates are coming in. We have young progressive candidates on the gubernatorial slate, right? And you represent, I'm not going to say the old guard, because I don't believe you are. Yeah, I actually don't believe you are, actually. But but how do you stand in that gap to say, because we're in a generational split right now, I would argue, right? And I feel like you're positioning yourself with someone who understands that we need to get progressive and leading differently, but also taking the fact that you have that experience already in that administration and the experience that you have, which is a part of how we've always operated. So how do you bridge that gap, A, and then how do you hedge off that young progressive energy that's hoping to come in to push the party more to the left?
And I think all of this is about relationships.
Mhm.
You know, like I started by telling you, I am the 10th of 11 kids. I'm the second youngest. Like I got beat up by a lot of my sisters growing up, but it started for me. My life started about relationships.
Mhm.
I have had the blessing of inheriting relationships from people who knew my parents, who knew my older siblings. You know, Tom Barrett, I've worked with in a lot of my career. Tom got me 1,000 signatures over the course, and he did that because he's known me my whole life, and a lot of my career has been associated with him. Like, I think you do this by establishing the relationships. Am I going to agree with Democrats on every issue? Hell no, right? When we never will. But if you get in the legislature, your job is going to be to push me.
You. Yep.
My job is going to be to say, this is what we can do. Here's the here's the group that we need in order to get that over the finish line. Like, again, anybody can want jobs, and it's nice to be in a situation where you're on an 80-20 issue, right? Who doesn't want to be there? But I also think we need people who are on the 52-48, and I'm on the 48 side, but I think we need to push people over the edge to get to that 51-49. And one of the things, I was a student of public policy long before I was ever involved in it. And I think where we are now, where we're going to have a 1 or 2 seat majority, I think we're going to work like hell to try to make sure that it's Democratic majority in the Assembly and the Senate. And we have the governor's office as well. Like, that provides us with opportunity, but it also means we got to be strategic about things. And even within that Democratic caucus, there's not going to be unanimity, or it's going to be hard to come to consensus on things. But that's where policy gets done. That's where you don't have to have the same group of allies on every issue. There may be suburban Republicans who should reasonably fear for their jobs, but also who know some of the things that are going on in the Milwaukee area, or have a little piece of the city that they represent. Like, those are ways that I think we can be strategic that we haven't been able to be, because the legislature has been so much dominated by Robin Vos and the Republican Party. Like, this is where policy can get done. And like, this is also the area that I've operated in throughout my career. I've worked with the business community. I've worked in nonprofits. I've worked in government. Like, it's been about, how do you find that lever that gets, just enough for you to get something done? Like, I think that's where we are, and I think that's the type of leader that we're going to want. And again, you cut me open, you're going to see Wisconsin progressive values through and through, and I'm not going to, I won't back down from any of those things. But I've also been in positions, if you're raising money for a nonprofit, you better leave your ego at the door sometimes, and you better find common ground. There are people who are some of our biggest donors at Discovery World who allowed for us to do a great expansion just before I left, and do things that are great for our community. We cancel each other out in every election since I was 18. I can guarantee you. But they appreciate STEM education. They want young people to have opportunities toward becoming problem solvers, and they want kids who live in neighborhoods around here at Sherman Phoenix, and they want them to go see the lake and experience that. And that's who we should be, and that's what you've got to do sometimes to get stuff done. So like, I'm not going to compromise on values, but I'm sure going to try to find the smart ways to get things done. And I think that's what people in Wisconsin want. It's what they deserve. And I think that's still who governing should be about. Like, people who are in the legislature, people who are in executive positions, that's what we should still be doing.
So we're counting on our legislators to turn liberal here, right? Sort of.
Well, we're counting on our legislators. We're counting on our Democrats to win.
Yes.
Like, I mean, you can't do anything. It's very difficult to govern. And this is what we've seen with Governor Evers. He has been on the defense for the last 7.5 years.
Playing good defense.
Yeah, he was a great goalie, right? And now we've got an opportunity. And I'm going to get out of my comfort zone here, because I'm a big sports guy, but I'm not a hockey player. Like, he played goalie. Now we've got a chance to move the puck up, and he can be, we can be the center, whatever. Like, we can score goals, right? Instead of just doing that. Like, that's, I think, the difference that we're going to have. And it's different from the last 15 years. Like, we are coming into the legislature right now. you will exercise muscles that nobody in the legislature has exercised in the last 15 years. Like, how do you find common ground? How do you have the thinnest of majorities and get to the promised land, get to being able, because what we've had for a long time was, you know, if something was going to get done, it was because Robin Voss said, yep, we'll get that done. You know, like, that's not the way things are going to be no matter what. And it's not going to be the case that the governor can just dictate that. So, you know, there will be we need a solid core of Democrats. We need to have progressive values. We also better be prepared to respond to people who are hurting out there when it comes to affordability. Like, our first issues better be around housing, around affordability of healthcare, around fixing schools, like, because property taxes,
lowering property taxes,
property taxes
property
are
owner.
so connected to schools. Like, that's the kind of stuff we better be prepared to deal with on day one. Like, you know, because that's people will give us license if they see that we're doing things on the issues that matter to them.
So why do you think that last proposal just failed? That was supposed to include the rebates and
So there's a couple reasons why, and I will tell you, you know, again, this is one where it just came out that like a whole bunch of 80% of the people said they were for this, both Republicans and Democrats. I'll tell you, I was against it, and I have talked to members of the legislature and said I appreciated the courage that they have had to stand against this and to stand against the governor of their party. That's not easy to do. So the things that I think are the biggest challenges with it, almost a third of the people in the state would have gotten nothing of these $300 or $600 things, payments that were going out. And a lot of them live around here. If you don't have a tax liability, if you're a young family, if you're a retiree who only gets Social Security, that doesn't get counted as income, you'd be getting nothing. So, like, you know, something where 3 out of 10 people are not getting, and those 30% of the people are some of the ones who are hurting most in the state of Wisconsin. I think that's a challenge. The other part of it is that, you know, I told you, I put together a couple of budgets. When they did all of the looking at what this would mean for the next budget, it said that you'd start with about a $3 billion deficit. Like, you know, and in Wisconsin, you have to pass by Constitution, you have to have a balanced budget. And starting at a deficit means, you know, less investment that we could potentially do in early childhood, in public education, in healthcare, like all those things. And, you know, and all this is a promised surplus that would come at the end of next June. So a year and a month from now. And I think we live in the Trump economy, and I don't have a hell of a lot of confidence that what we think is going to happen between now and then, whatever growth in the economy, I think there's a challenge. We're facing headwinds when it comes to a whole bunch of things related to inflation and wars across the, you know, halfway across the globe. Like, I just don't have enough confidence in the Trump economy that we're not going to need those resources to do whatever we can in Wisconsin. So, like, that's where I think things are on that. And again, and I don't like to be on the opposite side of Governor Evers. He asked me to come work in his administration. I've never been prouder than to work alongside him. You know, but the other challenge with this was, you know, for a long time, and I said that about trying to get things done, it's all about relationships. I think he has not necessarily had the relationships with Democrats in the legislature that one would have to and would want to cultivate over time. And I think, we want more Democrats in the legislature, but we also want to make sure that they're at the table as we're doing things. It has to be transparent, has to be out in the light of day. But you know, there's an old saying: it's a hard time, or it's a bad time to make a friend when you need a friend. You know, this was a time where Governor Evers, had he spent a lot of time over the last several years cultivating those relationships, it's not like it's a bad relationship, but it wasn't close enough where when he called on them, you know, and said, you know, that he needed this to get over the finish line, one, they hadn't been at the table negotiating it.
That was the issue, like, right there.
Yeah, there it was. Like, you know, if you want them, you put them at the table from day one. And my guess is we would have gotten a better deal, a deal that looked better for Democrats in Wisconsin. The cynic in me thinks that, you know, this was a Robin Voss trying to say, okay, let's say we do this and we put the state in a deficit going into the next budget. My guess is that, and I'm thinking in Robin Voss's terms, that, you know, that the Democrats probably win the governor's office in the fall. They win a majority in the legislature. They win, you know, but it's harder to govern. You know, we put them in a bad spot. And what we really care about is winning Wisconsin in 2028, having the majority in the legislature if you're a Republican in 2030, because then we can go back to gerrymandering maps and not have it, you know, like, this is how cynical some people are in government. And I'm for doing absolutely the opposite. I'm for creating an opportunity for us to have fair maps for a generation and for us to get people out to vote, because when people get out to vote, we win.
Yes.
It's to demonstrate.
I will just say that, you know, that is something that I think the Democratic Party has lacked, not just locally, but nationally, is that foresight and that strategic element to look ahead.
Yep, correct.
We're always so reactive. And I feel like the Republican Party has had this agenda for 40 years, taking into account its ebbs and flows around these different losses. I think, to your point, that was a strategic counter move that say, all right, we've lost this one. I think there's an assumption that we'll give this one up, but the play is 2030 or 2028, 2030. And I don't think the Democratic Party doesn't do enough.
And then we can, right? I mean,
and then now
who doesn't like we have seen over the last decade what a powerful tonic anger is. Like, there is anger that Donald Trump has been able to galvanize everywhere. And it has pitted person against person. It's pitted, people who have come to this country the right way. Right. And it's pitted people who have been here. That's what he has done. And I think, again, we got to get to a point where we are thinking long-term and we're playing, chess when everybody else is playing checkers. We got to be that smart. And you don't make decisions just about politics, but they have on the other side. Like it is about brass knuckles politics too often. And I think we've got to get to a point where, one, we can secure majorities, and two, we govern in ways that people see we're responsible, we're responsive, we're getting stuff done that means something to them. Like that's who we've got to be. Yeah,
but at the same time, those brass knuckles need to be retrofitted to our hands sometimes.
Better be able to use them,
because we have to. We're in a position now where the fight is upon us, and for too long, Democrats, in my estimation, have not been willing to put up the fight, and that's hit us in the head a couple times. So,
we better be ready, willing to stand up. And I'm again, I've never been somebody who felt the need that I need to raise my voice at every turn. Sometimes, you can be considered like a gong if you do, or the boy who cried wolf or whatever. Like pick your thing, but when necessary, absolutely we got to stand up, and we got to have people standing with us. I think when you go back to like what's happened with ICE and in other parts of the country, and those were community members that were standing. You see that here in Milwaukee, where people stand up and stand against some of the hatred and some of what's going on. Like government, yes, needs to stand alongside those, but we also need to empower people to do those things at the local level too.
Yeah.
Oh, someone just commented here, says, I like hearing Mr. Brennan's optimism that Democrats are finally going to have a voice and the willingness to work across the aisle to get things done transparently. I'm also hoping we can get Wisconsin to join the voting compact and universal health care.
Amen.
Yeah. I mean, and what we found out through this podcast is that we have a viewership that is yearning for information.
Yes.
And they want more information. We haven't, as a community, we haven't given our community the information they need. So that's why we offer this platform. That's why we invite all the candidates on, so that we can give you the space to talk about your values, talk about your plan, and give us an information so we can make informed votes.
I give you credit for doing that. I hope I haven't. I get passionate sitting here.
No, it's like, see it.
These are issues that mean something to me, and I have lived every day. Like I am, I'm going to go home down Fond du Lac Avenue, and I'm going to go to my house on Brown Street, and like I live these issues every day, and I will take that experience to me if I end up, going to the governor's residence and working inside the state capitol. Like, this is not going to change. You said, the best advice that I got from anybody running for governor, it was a guy, Tom Loftus, who ran for governor in the late 80s, I think, or early 90s, and he lost to Tommy Thompson. But his advice was, be authentic, be who you are. Like, you need to do that at the local level. I need to do it statewide. People in Wisconsin are smart. They're savvy. The people who watch this, like, they will see through BS in a heartbeat. And you better be and demonstrate who you have been and who you are. And I'm not going to, I will never run away from the fact that I've lived in the city for the last 26, 27 years. Like, most of my life has been in and around the city of Milwaukee. Like, I am going to be that, but I'm also going to listen to people when I go outside. Like, I want to tell you guys, if I have time to take one more,
many times,
one more.
right.
So I had the opportunity. This was now maybe 10 years ago. Barack Obama was president, and he came to Milwaukee for an event. I think it maybe was when Tom Barrett was running for governor. One of the times, Tom's run 3 different times, but he did an event for Tom, and I got the chance to go, and I got a chance to go meet with him backstage. And so, you have 20 seconds with the leader of the free world, somebody who you've admired. What are you going to talk about? Me, it wasn't politics. I want to talk about sports. So
that's his thing, though, too.
Yeah, so, of course. I'm no dummy. So we were at the UWM Panther Arena, which which was the Mecca, and I said to him, so we're standing there taking a picture, and I said, hey, this is where Al McGuire was coach when Marquette won and this is where they played when Marquette won the national championship in 1977. And he was like, oh, that's cool. And I thought nothing of it. And I went back to my seat to meet with, my mother was there, my sister, and some other people, my mother and father-in-law, because we had gotten these seats. And so, I said, hey, what did you talk about? And, I mentioned that, and he comes out, and the first line in his speech, he looks out in the audience, and somebody backstage is telling me that this is where Al McGuire. But so one, I would say, hey, I wrote a line in the president's speech. But I'll tell you that the other thing that I learned there is he was still listening.
Yeah, right.
He
Yes.
listened, and he didn't have to listen.
Yes.
And there are plenty of people who you see who would be like, yeah, whatever. Let me get to the next person, and let me look through you. You see people like that all the time. Here's a guy who is the leader of the free world. Yeah. He is the most admired man still in the world right now. And he is listening all the time. There's a lesson for you about who we should be and what leadership means, right?
Yep.
There it is.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Plug. I will be at the Obama Center tomorrow for a sneak peek of the center. The presidential library. Don't worry about it. running in the campaign has its perks sometimes.
Well, I'm coming with you.
Yeah. So we got tickets to go see. So I'm super excited. Cool. I hope we get Obama viewing, but maybe not. I've met him before.
I was a student at the University of Chicago. I got my graduate degree there when he was a sitting state senator. And so what that's going to mean to the South Side of Chicago and Hyde Park,
super
it is amazing. And it's something that's going to be worthy of all of us visiting. Now, here's one thing. So I've met Obama a few times, and actually when he was a state senator, he came and talked to our class of graduate students in the public policy school. I think I maybe have had one handshake with Michelle. If I had my chance, I would spend a little time with Michelle too. Again, you want to talk about?
Sorry, Obama. I'm Michelle.
We'll take them all.
But I'm Michelle. I'm Michelle.
Well, he's even admitted that.
Yeah, and he said that people like her more than like me. Yeah. So man. So, any closing remarks?
Well, I just want to make sure. Can you give our viewers where they can find your information, your website, and if you want to leave any 30-second spiel around why you're the best candidate for this job right now, and then we'll close out with some announcements or something.
Yes,
sure. So the website is Brennan for Wisconsin, Brennan for WI. So BRENNAN for FORWI.com. We're on X, and we're on all the other channels, Instagram. Where you can find all that stuff on the website. There's also, much more on issues. We talked about any number of issues here, but there are, lots of other issues, both that have urban and rural residents that I think people should pay attention to. Yeah, and we've talked a lot. You said there's 100 candidates. There's 7 or 8. There's a lot of, and I have worked with almost all of them, and everybody brings a different level of experience. And I would say, if there's a distinguishing thing that I lean into, it's that over the course of the last 2 decades, I have had almost nothing but executive experiences and been held accountable for complex budgets for large organizations. I ran, I helped the governor run the executive branch as Secretary of Administration, not only during what passed as normal times, but during the time where, we had the biggest economic crisis and one of the biggest public health crises that we've had in the last 100 years. That's what I offer up to people, and a reputation of being a problem solver and somebody who's not just in this for vengeance. This is not the next step on the ladder for me. I'm 56 years old today. I got to admit that, 56 years old. So this would be an opportunity for me to be to have a capstone on a career where I have worked in the nonprofit sector, in government, in business, to try to help do things. And I have one opportunity to do this at the state level and to do it for a state that means everything to me. I would give every ounce of my passion and every ounce of my being in doing this job. I'm doing all that to try to get the job. I am on the road endlessly. I've taken an unpaid leave from the job that I had. Like, that's
tell me about it.
Hey, I love my wife for lots of reasons, but if she has a good job at Northwestern Mutual, every other Friday she gets an extra little kiss on the cheek because she has also been, like, you do any of it. I don't know what your situation is like with a partner, but you do this as a partnership in everything that you do.
So I just had a conversation with my family yesterday. I said, everybody on my campaign team getting paid but me. Right? Because this is a full-time job. Like this is my job right now because I believe in it and I want to make sure that I'm available to meet the people, raise money, do all the different things because I believe in the impact that I can make on the state. So I hear that.
That's what it's about. You will get everything that I have and every ounce that I have, but it will also, I have a vision for a Wisconsin that's better than the one we have lived in over the last generation. And it's better because it incorporates more people. It listens to people. It meets people where they are. It does things in communities like the one that we live in and we love, and it lifts people up there. It takes people all around the state, but it is something that we have to have, and it's got to be better, I think, than what we have. We need to recognize that outcomes, whether it's education or whether it's the how we have dealt with poverty in the urban and rural areas of the state, how we deal with healthcare, it's not good enough. Like, let's get to something better. That's why I want the job.
Yep. So lastly, do you off the top of your head if you have any candidate forums or debates coming up? If not, we can look it up.
Yes, I know that we do because they seem to happen all the time.
All the time. Like,
but there's one at Bayview High School that's around school education. And I think it might be June 11th. You're going to want to check that, but I think that's one. And there are any number, but that one that stands out here locally, and that would be a great discussion around what's going on in MPS, but what's going on in the entire landscape in Milwaukee. Because as you know, Milwaukee is one of the more complex education landscapes in K-12 anywhere in the country. You've got half the kids who are not in MPS schools, but and we one way or another. We got to get to better outcomes for every kid and make it about kids as opposed to old grievances in Milwaukee.
So we encourage you guys out here listening to go online, check and see when those candidate forums are so that you can attend them, participate in this process, learn more about the information that they're giving out. And then ultimately, we want you guys to make the best vote that best suits your interests. We provided a space for all these candidates. I'm gonna call them out now. Kelda,
call them out.
And Mandela.
Yeah.
I'm gonna email y'all again.
Yeah.
We want you guys on the show. Really, we want you guys on the show. It's not scary. We're not gotcha moments where we're providing.
You didn't scare me once. It was very enjoyable. Let me just say on behalf. Now, let me say to Mandela, he sent me a text this morning saying happy birthday. That's good. We're all still friendly with each other. And none of this should be about blood sport, especially in our own primary and amongst our friends. Like, I appreciated that from him. And there have been other times where we've had opportunities, like you get the chance to be with each other in difficult, challenging circumstances. I have had situations where I'm mad about, an outcome, or I think somebody's twisting something I say, but ultimately, we all have to be, have thick skin to do this, but we also have to understand that we still are going to have relationships when this is all done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think we need to, and real quick, we need to have a return to decency.
Yeah.
Politics shouldn't be this ugly. Because politics for me in government is like rights and resources. That's what we're talking about. People's rights and then our resources and the government's responsibility to make sure that people have those rights and people have access to those resources. And it does not have to, like you said, have to be a blood sport. Why can't we just be, as the song says, why can't we all just be friends?
and how can Wisconsin, I don't think that's going to get any better at the federal level.
No,
not anytime soon.
Right? Not anytime that's not happening. No. But Wisconsin has been a leader on so many things. Like, we were the first state to approve women's suffrage, first place to have a kindergarten, first place to do a statewide income tax, the
housing,
all of those things. There's all these things that we have led on, and now we are trailing other states. And sometimes I think we're mimicking all this, the poisonous stuff that happens at the federal level. Let's find a way where we can actually lead again, where we can demonstrate to people that it doesn't have to be that. Now, we can still get stuff done, and I could use another word than stuff. Like, we can still be about that, but it doesn't have to always be about rubbing somebody else's nose and doing a victory dance around it. The idea that this is a zero-sum world where in order for me to win, you inevitably have to lose. Like, that is a creation of the last generation. Like, there were times when we could get stuff done together, and I want to get back to that. And I've lived this. Like, that's not just naivete for me. I've been in this situation. I've seen that happen. Like, let's find a way to do that.
There's room for us to all win. So
there should be. So again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, the purpose of these shows and us having the gubernatorial guests on is to just give them a voice and also put them in front of you all, our listeners, so that you guys will have an informed vote when you vote come August 11th for that primary for governor, our Democratic primary. So we just hope everyone pays attention.
And for state assembly.
Yes, indeed.
Gotta make sure he plugs that. But yeah, so just make sure, guys, we are paying attention. We're going back. If you need to, this our shows are online on our Facebook pages. Whatnot. If you just want to get another view of the candidates, all the candidates that we have interviewed are live streaming on our page and whatnot. So you can go back and just listen and get information again. So we won't be in that position where we're in the ballot box or people saying, well, I don't know about Joel. I didn't hear about Hong and these people. Well, yes, you did. You tuned in to Facts Over Feelings.
There you go.
And they were here, live and in charge, right? So again, we thank you, Joel, man. It has been fun. This has been a great time, man. And on his birthday.
Happy birthday.
It's so special, man. But
piece of cake in the
on
way
Micah Parsons' birthday.
On Micah Parsons' birthday at that. So
and I came from a little gathering. I should have brought you guys a piece of cake. I like that. Think of how good I would have done if I had delivered you
that would be great. That would awesome.
Trying to buy votes now.
Somebody probably wouldn't have liked it.
Right. So hey guys, tune in next week. We're gonna have 2 guests in studio next week. Nick Trug, who is a part of the Wisconsin Black Democratic Caucus here, and
Sean.
Oh, come on, man!
Dang it! The Department of something. Hold on, let me find it real fast. Sorry, Chandra. So I know who it is. I just don't know what she's doing.
So next week we're gonna have 2 Wild Jordans. Looking at that name to make sure he says it correctly. I don't know nobody beating us up.
So many.
And then after next week, we're gonna go on a brief hiatus for about a month or so. And when we come back, I don't know exactly when that will be. Probably a month from then at that point. But we'll make sure we put out some information to folks. But after next week, we're going to be on a brief hiatus for the show to allow some reorganization here that we're doing at Midwest Studios. And then you got the name?
Yeah. So Chandra Ellis. Hey, Chandra. So actually, they are coming on to promote a Vote with Wisdom,
nice.
Something that you'll be taking part of on June 27th.
Right?
Yep. So their organization is going to be coming in and talk about this program. They do a lot of advocacy work in the city, trying to get people out to vote and engage in the political process. So we'll have them on the show next week.
My friend Dino Black is part of that as well. So,
cool.
Yep. She reached out to me this weekend and said, how can we get into we getting some people watch the show now.
I'm just amazed.
Yeah,
like,
we're getting a lot of good,
how much traction
here.
That we're getting here, man. I'm like, wow. Yeah. So next week, tune in. We're probably gonna not gonna go just an hour. Might go a little bit over because we have 2 guests coming in, and I'm pretty sure the conversation is going to be great because it's going to be focused around voting and then what our Democratic Party here in Wisconsin is going to be doing. And folks, we just got to get gear up, fight, make sure, again, as I close, I say make sure that you are getting yourself registered to vote. It takes less than 5 minutes here in Wisconsin. You can do it at the polls. All you have to do is have an ID. I took my daughter when she turned 18. We did it in less than 3 minutes, literally at the polls, and that was the greatest feeling to get my daughter registered.
I did it with my daughter too, like that.
Oh, that was just a wonderful.
Oh
my God, it was just a great feeling. She was crying, and so we just had it.
You cried too. You can say you cried.
We'll talk here, But yeah, so just make sure we do that. Getting your IDs, people. There's no excuse. We have no excuse. We have nothing but time on our hands right now. We need to be gearing up because we are in a battle right now.
Yep, it's a battle.
This is definitely a battle, and we have to make sure that we're fighting back. As people say about the Democratic Party, they don't feel that we are fighters enough, and the Republicans, I call them MAGA. That's what they are now because they're not even the Republican Party I even come to know. they're just been overtaken right now. But we are definitely in a fight right now, and our battle sword is the ballot box.
Yep.
Yes.
That's where we fight at. So we have to make sure that we're using that power. So again, thank you all. Tune in next week. Again, next week will be our last show for a little bit, probably for a month or so, but we will come back and come back better than ever. Again, thank everyone for tuning in tonight. And I think we're going to close with that. Tay.
Hi, Mom.
Right. And
Tay, hi to
hey, Mom, because my mom thing just said she's watching. My mom actually spent the whole weekend with me.
Yeah.
That was just great. So, yeah. So thanks, Mom, for coming by. All right. Well, thank you guys. And Tay, I think you can end it. I think she said she's going to end it remotely some type of way. So we'll see. But thank you guys, and be safe and be blessed.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was good. Thank you again. That was a great conversation. I see the passion for real. You get passionate like I do. So I think like from policy time too. So
just keep going. Everything is up. Just keep at it.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the rest of your birthday.